Ghosts aren't supposed to age, but not Tommy. He was killed when he was but 3 years old, his little body brutally crushed in a hit-and run outside his home. He had been standing on the pavement holding his mummy's hand when he was distracted by a sparrow on the road. Squirming out of Anna's clutch, he ran out. He was dead an instant later. Poor Anna, shocked by what she had just seen, could barely remember the color of the car as it sped away. Tommy was their only child. Anna and Mark, Tommy's father, had no more children, continuing to live quietly in the same house. And Tommy played on the street, sometimes on his red tricycle, sometimes kicking a red ball with Scooby-Doo on it. He seemed harmless enough, only wanting to be close to his home and parents. He never went inside. It was only after a couple of years people realized that Tommy was getting older. Mary and a couple of other neighbors tried to talk to Anna, but she looked rather blank, as if hardly understanding who Tommy was. By the time Tommy would have been 10, it was a common sight on that street. A boy pedaling furiously on a tricycle with his knees bent up to his ears. Mary once brought it up at a local meeting. She was Anna and Mark's next-door neighbor with 3 kids of her own.
Something has to be done. The boy is growing bigger every day. Someone will get hurt.
The others looked at her politely, and nothing was done. Years passed. Tommy was becoming a man, a young, handsome man with a shock of bright hair and a fierce smile, pedaling around chasing sparrows on the road just outside their house. Drivers who didn't know would brake to a sharp stop, jump out, only to see nothing. It was the evening of his 18th birthday. Anna stood on the pavement, the exact spot she had been standing so many years ago. One of Mary's kids came by and stood next to her. Together, they watched Tommy kick a Scooby-Doo ball, a tall, lean man on the cusp of life. Mary's kid turned to Anna. "I saw you. You pushed him. And it was his dad's car." Anna gasped. She had been waiting for this moment, for someone to tell her what they had done. Tommy then stopped kicking the ball and looked at his mum. A flame burned in his eyes, the sunlight set his hair on fire, and he smiled, that fierce toddler smile, crooked on a young man. Anna shook her head. "I couldn't be a mom. I hated every second. I wanted my own life back. And so did Mark." Tommy held his hand out to Anna. She stepped on the street. The sudden squealing of brakes and her scream ripped through the calm street. This time, Mark didn't speed away. He came out of the car and looked down silently at his wife's broken body. Tommy was gone. Case file 023912. The following is from a series of journal entries by an Alexander Kennedy that have been turned over to the proper authorities. They read as followed. April 12, 2018, 11:12 a.m. I barely slept last night. Some weird noise kept waking me up. Almost sounded like scratching at my window. But every time I'd walk over and open the blinds, thinking I'd see a cat or some shit like that, nothing would be there. Probably the kid next door playing around again. I swear next time he won't find it so funny when I put my boot up his ass. Got a hot day tonight, though. Hoping it goes a lot smoother than the last one did, and I actually get some action. Not like that feisty prude from a few days ago, that fucking bitch. She would have liked what I had to give if she accepted it. Whatever. Never have to worry about her again. 13th of April, 2018, 10:17 a.m. What a night. I was happy not to get any sleep this time around. That one had curves in all the right places and really knew how to please a man. I didn't even mind that she wanted to crash here. I even got a little extra something this morning for my hospitality. I hated seeing her go, but damn did I love watching her leave. Heard that weird sound again last night. Gonna go have a chat with the kid next door in a minute. The weird thing was, all night I had this weird feeling like I was being watched. Probably all the jealous guys checking out my score. 15th of April, 2018, 4:17 a.m. I saw something. I don't know what it was, but I'm certain it was a person outside of my window. I was woken up by that fucking scratching noise again, so I ran over to the window to tell the kid next door to fuck off. And I swear, for just a second, I thought I saw her. But no one was there, I'm sure of it. Probably had a few too many drinks last night. Yeah, that must be it. Had a chat with the boy next door's father today. Told the guy that if his son kept fucking with me, I'd be goddamn sure he'd regret that. Still the 15th of April, 2018, 2:27 p.m. Had a chat with the boy next door's dad today. Told him that if his son kept fucking with me, I'd make sure he'd goddamn regret that. Then he tried to threaten me, so I smacked him around a little. I didn't want to, but, well, no one disrespects me and gets away with it. I told him that it would be a lot worse if his kid fucks around again at night. He changed his tune after that. God, I hate living here. 16th of April, 2018, 10:11 a.m. I know this sounds crazy, but I saw her again, just outside my window, staring at me. I heard scratching on the window again, so I threw open the blinds to let the kid have it. But it was her. Just for a minute. Just staring at me. She looked terrible, pale and blue. What the fuck is going on? Why am I seeing this? It can't be real. It just can't be. I shook it off and went back to sleep. Felt like I was being watched again, but I tried ignoring it. Seeing my score, Mandy from the other night again. I'm not usually into repeats, but she's a woman of many talents. Says she likes guys who can be rough with her. Well, she's got no idea how rough I can be. Maybe I'll give her a taste. April 20th, 2018, 4:20 p.m. Had to make an entry for today at this time. Enjoying a nice bowl of vegetable soup as I write this. Keep seeing that fucking girl everywhere now. But I'm also high as a kite, so maybe that's why. It must be. Don't think I'll be hearing from that hot piece of ass Mandy again. Apparently, I was a little too rough with her. She's got no idea. Ah well, on to the next one. Investigator's note. At this time in the journal entries, there was a full page of odd phrases in a different handwriting. The phrases were as followed. I know, you know, and they know. Followed with never rest, never safe. And finally, why? How come? Why? April 24th, 2018, 2:19 p.m. Okay, I'll admit, I'm freaked out now. Some weird shit has been going on. The fucking journal page before this one? The fuck was that about? That bitch from the other night must have written it before she left. Talk about a goddamn fucking psycho. That being said, I also keep seeing her. All the time. I see her in the mirror when I'm getting ready. I see her outside of my window constantly. And I even see her now when I'm driving around. Just staring at me. The fuck does she want from me? What did she think would happen? Fucking bitch, this can't be real. I must be going crazy. Must be. 28th of April, 2018, 12:19 p.m. I know it's been a few days, been dealing with a lot of shit. That girl, I see her. I don't have any doubts anymore. I woke up this morning and she was at the foot of my bed, staring at me. I asked if she had come back for another chance at me, to accept my advances this time around. She let out this scream. It was fucking horrible. Her mouth Her mouth got so large and was just a dark void. My ears are still ringing. What does she want? To fucking torment me? I didn't do shit. She did this to herself. Fucking hell.
Investigator's note. At this point in the journal entries, there are about 10 pages just with the word liar written over and over again on them. And with a similar handwriting as before, it seems. There are no more entries in this journal, however, another book was provided.
11th of May, 2018, 10:32 p.m. Had to get a new journal. She fucked the other one up. Why is she doing this? Can she still do it? I don't know anymore. I do know that I'm fucking exhausted. It feels like I haven't slept in weeks. I do think about it, and about her. What was I supposed to do? Fucking hell, I need a drink. 13th of May, 2018, 12:21 p.m. I can't even have a shower in peace anymore without that bitch following me. I see her through the steam, staring at me with her pale blue skin and her bloodshot eyes. I told her to fuck off, but she wouldn't. She kept creeping closer and closer to me until she was right in front of my nose in the shower. I tried to grab her, but she let out another fucking scream. It resonated off the shower walls, and I got a fucking nosebleed. That fucking bitch. 17th of May, 2018, 11:19 p.m. So now it seems I can't even jerk off in fucking peace anymore. She just sits there and stares at me. And let me tell you, nothing gets me harder than a chick watching me. But this is fucking different. This goddamn bitch. I just need some alone time. I offered her a whack at it and she screamed at me again. Last time I'm doing any shit like that. 23rd of May, 2018, 6:12 a.m. Okay, I'm done. I admit it, I'm freaking the fuck out. Even I have my limits. I woke up because I felt this weird feeling, and when I opened my eyes, she was hovering above me and screamed. I saw the darkness in her mouth, the endless void. I begged her to leave me alone and told her I was sorry for what happened. She just kept screaming. I just ran out of the apartment, and when I came back, she was standing in the corner of the room with her back to me. She hasn't moved since. I don't know what she's gonna do next. I need to figure this shit out. 25th of May, 2018, 4:12 p.m. I saged the fuck out of my apartment. I read online that's how you get rid of ghosts or some shit, but I didn't do a goddamn thing. At first I thought she was really gone. So I decided to have a celebratory beer. Then when I closed the fridge and turned around, she was right there in my face. She screamed at me again. I hate it. I hate it. I hate the feeling it gives me, like I'm looking into hell itself. I don't believe any of that shit, but maybe I do now. Fucking bitch. Fucking bitch.
Investigator's note. 2 pages of the journal, in a similar but different still handwriting than Kennedy's, only 2 words seem to be repeated throughout the pages.
Do it.
2nd of June, 2018, 10:12 a.m. What's there to write anymore? I wake up, she's there. I take a shit, she's there. I get takeout, she's there. And every time I think she's gone and let my guard down, I turn around and she's right there, in my face, screaming at me. She left me another message. Just do it. Like, the fuck does she mean with that? I don't know, but she can go fuck herself. I'm sure as shit not letting her win this. June the 4th, 2018, 6:28 p.m. Heard from Mandy. Said she decided she wanted to play again. To be very honest, I'm not sure if I'm up for it. But I've never been one to turn down some action. Told her to come by and bring some food. Haven't had much of an appetite lately. So, hoping she can work one up. June the 5th, 2018, 10:45 a.m. Mandy left in a hurry last night. She was only here for about an hour, and right before we could get started, Mandy got really nervous and just said she had to go. She practically ran out of here. I got really mad. I wanted to grab her and show her what happens when I'm disrespected in such a way. But I couldn't. I saw her again. That fucking bitch. In the corner, just staring at me with that judgmental look. So I let Mandy go.
Investigator's note. At this point in the journal, there's another repeated word in the similar but different handwriting. Just the word, why. This word is repeated through the entire journal on every page, front to back.
June the 23rd, 2018. Who cares, oh fucking clock? I see her anytime my eyes are open, and even now when they're not. She's always there, always following me. I tell her to leave me alone, and she just screams at me. She keeps leaving me messages. Why? You know why, you fucking bitch. You know why. I can't go out like this. I'm so tired. I haven't eaten in days. She won't stop.
Investigator's note. At this point in the journal, the phrase, "I'm sorry," is repeated on 50 pages, front to back. However, this time it's in the same handwriting as the other entries made by Alexander Kennedy.
June the 30th, 2018, 10:11 a.m. All right, you win. I'm sorry. No, I am. Yes, I know what I did. I know what I did to you. I'm sorry. What can I do? I can't do that. I can't. I'm scared. I'm scared, okay? I don't want to know what it feels like. I just don't. I'm alright, just stop screaming. Please, just stop screaming. I said I was sorry. 4th of July, 2018, 9:47 p.m. Stop. Please, stop. Just stop screaming. Please stop. I can't. I'm scared. I can't. 8th of July, 2018, 2:13 p.m. I can't. Please stop. Don't scream anymore. I can't hear anything but the screams anymore. 9th of July, 2018, 11:12 p.m. It's time. I'm going now. She wins. I lasted 4 months, but she won. I'm sorry. I'll do it. I'm going.
The journal entries end here. Alexander Kennedy walked into the police station at approximately 11:30 p.m. on the 9th of July and surrendered himself to the authorities. Since then, Kennedy has confessed to the brutal murder of a 24-year-old girl exactly 4 months ago on the night of the 9th of April 2018. Kennedy has been extremely cooperative, informing the officers of where the crime took place, as well as divulging the exact time that he killed her, which is coincidentally also at 11:30 p.m. And lastly, the place where he had dumped her body. The remains of the missing girl were found at the exact location, and the cause of death lined up with Alexander Kennedy's confession. When asked about why he murdered her, he informed police that she wouldn't put out and that she disrespected him. He also informed them to read his journals. The officers present at the confession asked why a man with his very apparent attitude towards women and lack of respect would even think of confessing to a murder like this, to which Mr. Kennedy only responded with the following:
She wouldn't stop screaming.
Alexander Kennedy had no more visions of the girl after he confessed to her murder and is currently serving a life sentence. The girl's remains were laid to rest on July the 30th, 2018.
I was traveling through Eastern Europe at the time and heard about a curse involving a hitchhiker on an abandoned road. I was the kind of person who ran towards crap like that. I wish I hadn't. The road was on the outskirts of a town and the locals gave me a good warning about it. The warning was simple. Once the sun drops, don't drive down Zadvochka Road. I asked if that was because of looters or gangs or punk kids, but the locals said no. It was because of the curse of Astoptyornik. From what I know, it is the Ukrainian word for the hitcher. They warned me not to just think about myself, but also my friends and family. I was curious, but lied and said I'd take their warnings. That night, I went for a drive to Zadvodska Road. On the map, it showed the road started and finished with dead ends at offshoots left and right. Zadvodska was 6 kilometers long, but the straight line distance between its beginning and end was only 1 kilometer. The road curved and swirled so much it made the length of the trip 6 times longer. I arrived at the offshoot that led into Zadvodska. The entrance looked like every other quiet country road I'd passed to get here. But this road was separating 2 sets of forests which grew thicker and canopied overhead the further you went in. I turned into Zadvodska and drove 30 feet before the road curved off to the right. It turned sharply, right again, left again, and before I knew it, I lost all sense of direction. I drove slow, taking my time as I followed the winding road through the thickening woods. After 5 minutes, I came out the other side and Zadvodska ended. Either I could go left or right, but Zadvodska Road was done. The locals did say that driving down the road was like playing Russian roulette. People mostly got lucky and the curse wouldn't materialize. But sometimes, if you turned your headlights off for a minute while driving and then turned them back on, it would cause the curse to manifest. I flicked off my headlights and slowly re-entered Zadvodska. Without my lights, I was just barely able to see 5 feet ahead. A minute passed, then 2. I turned my lights back on and immediately saw something ahead. A figure was standing to the right of the road. Its arm was out, thumb up in a hitchhiking position. I drove closer and made out the details of the figure. It was a man, a homeless vagrant wearing a priest's outfit with a dirty collar. His hair was dark and wild, and his eyes were demented. His face was covered in bloody wrinkles. I couldn't tell if he was smiling or screaming. Within seconds of seeing him, I'd sweat through all my clothes. I pushed the gas down to speed by him, but it had the opposite effect. The car slowed. I slammed the gas pedal, stomped it, kicked it, but the car crept along, idling up next to the hitcher. The hitcher came right up to the window, pressing his bloody, wrinkled face against it. His smile pushed through the glass without breaking it, and I felt his cold breath on my face. His eyes shimmered like a cat's with an orange glow. At this point I'd realize, somehow, I'd confused the gas pedal with the brakes and switched my feet. I hit the actual gas and peeled away, leaving a bloody wrinkled smear across the passenger side window. I whipped around the next corner and the hitcher disappeared from my rear view. But he reappeared 3 more times along the side of the road as I tried to get off Zadvodska. Finally, I reached the entrance and got onto the next road, and the next, and before I knew, I was back in the village. I went to my hotel, got my things, and cut my vacation short. The next day, I was on a flight home. But I kept seeing him. It wasn't often, but sometimes when I drive at night, I'd see the hitcher on the side of the road. He started off with just a smile and a wave. Then suddenly, he started running out into the street to get in front of my car. Then he started trying to jump on the car. I was always alone, so I could never ask anyone if they saw him. I couldn't tell if it was all in my head or real. I never saw him when I was walking, so the small amount of time I actually spent in a car went to nearly 0. I rarely traveled again in cars or buses or any forms of road transit. I basically walked everywhere, but I stopped driving or riding in transit altogether 2 years after I drove down Sadvodska. I was DDing my friend Jamie home from a dinner party when I saw the hitcher in the middle of the road. I swerved to avoid him and figured Jamie thought I was crazy. But Jamie saw the hitcher too. He described the hitcher's priest-like outfit and wondered why he was on the middle of the road, raging at me. I wasn't sure if I felt better knowing that someone else could see the hitcher, or worse, knowing that the hitcher had followed me home from Zadvodska and was in fact real. A week later, Jamie called me and told me he had seen the hitcher again when he was out for a drive with his wife. She had seen him too. A few days after, they both died in a freak car accident. I haven't stepped in a car again since. But last week, I rode the city bus for the first time in years, and the second stop after I got on, I saw him, the hitcher. He was on the side of the road, and he had my friend Jamie with him, and Jamie's wife, who were both badly decomposed, but not dead. I could see them weakly struggling, but they were being held up by the back of their necks by the hitcher, who was in complete control. The hitcher made the two bodies move around like two grotesque ventriloquist dummies as he himself laughed and danced. We drove past the spectacle, and then I suddenly realized everyone on the bus was staring at the hitcher as well.
Staring blankly forward in my second period English class, I caught a whiff of an unmistakable smell, ever so faint, but undeniably present. The smell of death. At least, that's what I call it. For over a year now, whenever someone's about to kick the bucket, I can smell it in the air. It started with the air getting thick and soupy. Then comes the smell, sweet and tangy like fermenting fruit. The closer I am to the deceased, and the closer they are to dying, the stronger and more putrid the smell is. Maybe it's some kind of psychic premonition. Some people see visions. I literally smell the future. Who knows how things like this work? The first time I smelled death, I was in the hospice with my 91-year-old grandmother. My parents stepped out of the room to discuss options with the doctor and left me all alone by her bedside.
Herbert, is that you?
She looked up at me, thinking I was her late husband.
I'm afraid,
she said, and that's when the smell hit me. I had to run over to a garbage can and start dry heaving. At first I thought maybe she just soiled herself, but then the machines all around her started going haywire. The doctor rushed in and told us we had to leave the room. She was dead in less than 3 minutes. Since then, the smell has always been around me, but usually it's more imperceptible. Every now and then, though, the smell gets so strong I practically blow chunks, and I always learn that someone nearby passed away. Once it was a car accident I saw about a block away. I could smell it from all the way down the road. One of the drivers wasn't wearing a seatbelt and smashed in their heads on the steering wheel. The only question on my mind was, why am I smelling this now? Before I could even begin to consider the smell, it ramped up times 100, causing me to gag and puke a little in my mouth. Death never smelled like this before. It was suffocating. Normally I could tell where the smell was coming from, but not this time. It was all around me. I had to leave the room. I got up and rushed out of the classroom, heading to the closest bathroom to hurl and rinse out my mouth. As soon as I got to the toilet and started hurling, I heard bangs, followed by screams. The smell was so bad I could barely think. What the hell is going on? There were more bangs and a huge commotion, the sound of many people running as fast as they could. I wasn't sure if I should run or hide in the bathroom, and that's when I heard the bathroom door slam open. That's when I realized why the smell followed me into the bathroom. That's when I knew that the stink of death was coming from me.
They always came at night. The terrible and inhumane things that haunted me for years and years. I can't even call them creatures because I never knew if they were physical beings or not. These horrors came only after the sunset and the darkness of the night had blanketed the world with its false serenity. Nothing was serene about the night when these malicious apparitions came to me. I can only speculate where they came from and what they are. In my mind, they seemed like a product of prayer, a healing prayer meant to improve the health of my grandmother in her childhood days. She's told me about a time when she was an orphan in the western Ukraine after the Great Patriotic War, when her legs started atrophying for no apparent reason and no doctor could actually help her. She spent months losing the function of her legs, until an elderly woman came to visit the orphanage and found my grandma with her decaying legs. And Grandma said she can vaguely recall seeing this woman standing over her, chanting, praying. After that, Grandmother's legs miraculously healed. I don't rule out the possibility of some extraordinary thing happening here. Maybe this woman was a faith healer. Maybe she was a witch doctor of some sort. And maybe she was handling forces that were far beyond her control. We'll never know for sure. Maybe because Grandma regained her legs, something had to be taken as payment. My health and my sanity. Judging by my family's history, it's probably not only me. An uncle of mine became increasingly volatile before having a huge argument with the family, and so left the house. Unfortunately, he ended up involved in the 90s Russian oligarch gang affairs and had his life cut short. Another aunt died relatively young due to alcoholism, even though she was by all means nothing like that. Like one would imagine an alcoholic to be, I mean. My cousin is having weird health issues. It causes her to faint every now and then, without any detectable cause. And I was being visited by grotesque fiends for years at night, starting out maybe when I was around 5, I think. As long as I remember, they'd show up at night, horrible and inhuman, ugly, disgusting, and visually torturous. They were insectoid kind of things. They were just ghastly, amorphous shadows, and they were humanoid things too. A pale, thin thing without a face and absurdly long arms with almost cartoonishly long claws. I could even see a reflection of myself with my mouth sewn shut. Creatures themselves had mouths gaping on its palms, filled with piranha-like teeth. There was an ostrich-like monstrosity with 4 hooves and an elongated human face. Some of those things looked like mutated animals, others like completely alien things. The worst one of all was a vaguely anthropomorphic entity walking on all 4s, almost like an ape but with an awkward gait. Its joints clicked and cracked as it crawled towards me, emanating a terrible stench of pus mixed with wet dirt as it stalked around. The thing was completely nude, aside from the occasional tuft of hair jutting out from the muscular frame. Its most uncanny feature, however, was its face. The thing was reversed upside down. Its mouth was on its forehead, a hairy set of lips containing a single bloodshot, soul-piercing eye, and its eyelids were above its crooked chin, perpetually closed until it was about to feed, revealing needle-like teeth under each eyelid and long, prehensile forked tongues. Every time these things came to me, they came to feed on something inside of me. As a little boy, I would freeze up at the sight of something shifting and maneuvering in the dark until it revealed its horrific face to me. I thought the fear alone paralyzed me, but in actuality it was something else, something I figured out when I was a teenager. These things, they are like vampiric parasites. They would latch on to me with their feeding organ and fill me with a paralyzing agent to keep me still as they fed on me. Every single time, they'd suck this something out of me, leaving me exhausted and in pain the morning after. Specifically leaving my bones aching and riddling my skin with the feeling of pins and needles at the sight of the bite, without leaving physical marks behind. Seems like these things leave nothing physical behind, nothing that can be seen under the light of the sun. Naturally, I tried telling my parents about the things that haunted me at night, but they reassured me these were just nightmares or night terrors. I wish they were nightmares, but they weren't, because on many nights during which I wasn't being attacked, I suffered from nightmares about these hellish things. We talked about sleep paralysis too, but it wasn't that. And I tried to protest. They just dismissed it as a wild imagination. I didn't know that vivid imagination and sleep paralysis left behind traces of brain-melting bone aches in a child. By the time the pain noticeably crippled me, I guess it was too late. Inflammation was burning its way through my spine. It turned out. The spinal column was already in an early stage of fusing and contorting itself. I was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis. But that didn't explain the pain in my arms and legs, nor did it explain the awful nightly battles I was having time and time again, either with these tormenting beings or with my own body. Many nights I had cried myself to sleep just from the unbearable pain. It had gotten so bad that even taking a deep breath was becoming painful, and something inside of me seemed to have snapped overnight. The childlike, existential dread of these things had turned into a burning, passionate hatred, fueled by the vicious joy bringing relief of adrenaline carried on the wings of my stress-induced agitation, turned into an outright boiling anger. Sometime after my diagnosis, I had decided enough was enough. At the same time, the concept of evening was being stretched into later and later hours of the day. I had started seeing these things before I was even in bed. I could see them lurking at the periphery of my vision, stalking the unlit rooms of the house, salivating their neurotoxin as they waited for me to head to bed. Figuring I had to at least try and defend myself from these things, or else I might end up dead, or worse, a vegetable. That's why I finally chose to fight back. Throwing fist proved effective against one or two of these night stalkers, but they have adapted as well. Those that usually came alone stopped coming alone. Instead, they started arriving in packs, consistently. At that point, punching and kicking didn't suffice, and I ended up getting overwhelmed with my body becoming the banquet of alien hyena-like swarms. The mornings after were pure, athletic agony. It ruined my sleep, and my awful mood sapped the strength out of me and the will to live a normal, active life. My condition even worsened as the days wore on, and I found myself in a deeper abyss of bone-breaking pain. At the time, I hit my lowest point. I was becoming increasingly anxious about everything and slowly turned agoraphobic. The stress was killing me, and my eternal fury was reverting to its original state. I was becoming afraid of those things again. I was becoming afraid of every movement and noise and sensation gliding across my skin. My entirety was being consumed by fear. At some point, I began feeling as if each move I made, physically and metaphorically, resulted in a burning hot nail being inserted into my skin. And that led to my mind turning in on itself. Dysthymia came first, followed by a full-blown depression. Suicide ideation came about later. I never really planned about killing myself. I kept romanticizing the idea of dying just to escape all of this pain in my head over and over again. Eating became an issue, moving became an issue, and leaving the house became an issue. Everything was falling apart around me, and only the Night Stalkers remained. I've gained a new friend in the form of the occasional bowel inflammation. These things destroyed everything for a large chunk of my life, but then, in a strange twist of fate, they were also the key to fixing most of my problems. They were winning battle after battle, but this led to my victory in our war. One evening, I was making coffee in the kitchen while my parents were out of town, and there was a power outage. The house went immediately dark, and my mind went dark with it. Instead of freezing, probably because of my horrible sleep schedule and the constant mental strain of the never-ending stress and pain, my brain just went into an overload. An eerie, cold sensation washed over me as the pain disappeared into the void of the darkness. Clarity grazed me for the first time in a long, long while, right before I felt something touching the back of my neck. With a swiftness I couldn't even imagine myself having, I turned and swung my mug wildly. I hit something solid. The sound of shattered ceramic tore through the silence, followed by a terrible shriek that rocked the entire house. Somehow, I don't even know how, as if one of the same horrors haunting me possessed my body, I kept swinging the jagged shard still connected to the handle of my now destroyed mug. The sound of soft thumps sounded almost melodic to me at that moment, and eventually, whatever I was hitting fell down. Before I knew it, the fluorescent light had washed the kitchen anew in a white shimmer, revealing my handiwork. A bloodied chimera of avian and serpentine features was prone beneath my feet, unmoving, still dead. Pulsating waves of blood raced through my body, leaving a strange after-feeling all over. Before long, the pain returned, followed by the realization of what had just happened. I had just killed one of these monstrosities. Dread, mixed with excitement, swirled in my mind as I understood the ramification of my actions here. Both of those feelings because I could finally prove the beings were real, and because I killed a presumably living creature, leaving its corpse in my parents' kitchen. Come morning, none of that mattered. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, nothing remained of the thing by the time dawn arrived. It just evaporated like it never existed. It left nothing behind. A pile of ceramic shards on the floor and a coffee stain. No blood, no flesh, no corpse, nothing. Only pain. Lots of pain. My body was beyond sore that morning. My body was in shambles, but at least I knew. I knew I could stop these things from hurting me further. I could finally end their reign of terror over my life. And so, I finally fought back. Now properly armed, keeping a knife under my pillow just in case. For years I've fought these things off, killing many of them. I've ended up knee and elbow deep in monster blood, and yet they still keep coming, again and again. Somehow, even those I've butchered and dismembered return. They were almost taunting me as they came back after each time I killed them, just to do it again and again, as if trying to prove the point that my efforts were ultimately futile. Even if it seemed so, they weren't really futile. My condition had gotten better because these things could no longer feed on me anymore, and fighting so frequently had improved my overall feeling. The depression was gone, and I found a new joy in life. Each morning proved to be a new challenge, granted, a new mountain of incorporeal corpses to overcome. I fell in love with my violent routine, even though it made things with people rather complicated sometimes. It's off-putting to have a knife under your bed, especially when you live in a decent and quiet part of town. I've never really bothered telling anyone about the fiends. It's not like most people would believe me anyway. And it's not like my joy would last forever. Life is a struggle after all. It is pain, and it is agony. One day, they just stopped coming. Just like that. The hordes of parasitic ghouls were nowhere in sight. Gradually, then suddenly, they just faded out of existence. Maybe they were never even here. Maybe I was just imagining them after all. I never found proof of their existence, and there never was any proof of their existence anywhere else. My condition is an actual disease, fully diagnosable and somewhat manageable, not to mention that my awful mental state is the way as it is because of my disease. I am a deeply disturbed man who is the son of an anxious and ridiculously superstitious, to the point of mild supernatural paranoia, mother, who has a medical issue that we have no real concrete explanation for. That said, I doubt these things weren't real. They had to be real. I could see them, I could feel them, I could fear them. And now, they're gone. I never imagined I'd miss the torment, but here I am, clearly losing my mind over the fact that I'm not suffocating on a mouth full of dread. I am losing sleep because there's nothing lurking in the shadows, and over the fact that I'm completely and utterly alone, unbothered and undisturbed, stressing over the ghastly silence and the oppressive emotional void that comes from a not-so-sudden lack of constant stimulation. Hemingway has this classic moment in The Sun Also Rises when someone asks Mike Campbell how he went bankrupt. All he can say is, gradually, then suddenly. That's how the silence drives you insane, especially after living years and years inside a storm of noise and chaos. You wake up one day and it's silent. It's weird, but it's a welcome change. Then you wake up the next day and it's still silent. And on the third day, it's silent still. By the end of the week, you are suspicious because it's still silent, and it's never been silent, and you're thinking of all these thoughts. Is this for real? Is this a trap? But it remains silent. Before long, before you even realize it, you're resentful of the silence, and then you've become afraid of the silence, and you can do nothing to end it. I just want something to go wrong for one night, but nothing ever does, and it hurts. It really bloody hurts, because I've destroyed my life, my brain, I've destroyed everything to get over the pain and the chaos, and now it's gone, but the mental agony still pulsates in my spine, crippling me for days on end, and there's nothing I can do about these mental wounds. Nothing I can do to make them stop stinging and bleeding, now that nothing but a cold, grey silence remains. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself rather bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one particular evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street on my side was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but finishing each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer to me. I took my eyes off him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back, and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved, until I noticed him again. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved rather fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, just staring at him. And then he started moving towards me again. He took giant, exaggerated tiptoed steps as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone. Except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say that at this point I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't.
I just stood there, completely frozen, as the smiling man crept towards me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling his smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the hell do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was more of a whimper. What the hell? Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance walking away, just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go until he was far enough away to be almost out of my sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side of the road and back onto the better lit road with a sparse traffic. Looking behind me, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see a stupid smile. But he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk, he didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that is a very, very scary thing to see. It was an average morning when it all started. I wished I hadn't looked into the mirror that day. It was strange. My reflection was different. My eyes were a bit off, my skin looked pale, and it looked like I was smiling, even though I wasn't. It was a scary experience. I was always creeped out by mirrors, but I thought maybe I was sick. Later in the day, I had a meeting with my friend, and I was curious if he could see these strange features on me. "Do I look pale?" I asked him. "Nope," he shook his head. "Absolutely not. Why?" "Just asking. I looked a bit ill in the morning." Maybe it was just a lightning that tricked me, I thought to myself. I woke up the next day and I already forgot about it. But as I looked into the mirror again, I almost jumped back. I looked even worse than the day before. My eyes became darker, like you could barely see I had pupils. I was paler than before. I looked like I had some kind of serious illness. I wanted to make sure, so I quickly went back to my room and took a selfie. To my surprise, I looked completely normal on the photo. Suffice to say, I was confused. What the hell was going on? Maybe the mirror had some damage that caused this illusion. Or maybe just the bathroom lights. I don't know. I was thinking about doing some experiments with the mirror, but I was already late from work, so I just left it there. The following day, I woke up earlier than usual. I was shaking a little bit as I opened the bathroom door, afraid of what I will see in that damn mirror. As I slowly approached it, I could already see my reflection. My eyes were totally black, like in some kind of horror movie with the black-eyed children. My skin was as white as fresh snow, and the most disturbing thing was the fact that my reflection was widely smiling at me like some kind of maniac. Of course, I was shocked. I stood there for about a minute, but it felt like hours were passing by. I couldn't even breathe. I finally looked down and noticed my hands and legs were shaking. When I finally calmed down, I took a picture of the mirror. It looked the same in the picture too. Then I finally grabbed the mirror and I took it outside, still naively hoping that the lights were tricking me. I hoped it was just some kind of optical illusion, even though I didn't even believe it anymore. The reflection was the same. It was just like me, but so much more uglier and scarier, like some evil demon who tried to look like me. My brain tried to process what was happening, trying to find a logical explanation for the events. But it failed. I put that cursed thing back in the bathroom and then went to sleep, or at least tried to get sleep. But I started to get really paranoid from what was happening. After hours of thinking, I finally fell asleep. I was lucky I didn't have to go to work the next day. When I woke up, I decided to avoid that bathroom at all costs, as long as I could. I couldn't believe it when I pulled curtains and I could see the same horrible reflection in my bedroom window. I screamed, but for some reason, I still remained there, not moving an inch from where I was. I had absolutely no idea what to do. Who knows if that thing can follow me anywhere or not? I felt like I wasn't safe in my own fucking room. Then I finally decided what to do. I slammed the bathroom door open. I picked up a steel hammer to break the fucking mirror in pieces, hoping that it would stop the other me from appearing ever again. As I was ready to hit the mirror, I dropped the hammer to the ground from the shock. There was a mirrored sentence written on the glass. It was blood red. Considering the absurdity of the whole situation, maybe it was written with blood.
Let me out.
I ran out of the bathroom, and then I ran out of the house, trying to catch my breath. I opened my phone and sent a picture of the reflection to my friend. I told him what happened. "That's messed up," he texted back a few minutes later. "Maybe you should move out, man. That's unreal. I've no idea what to say. I thought you were joking." We texted for another few minutes, then I went back to the house. I thought I was going crazy. The other me wrote the exact same sentence on every window, even my TV.
Let me out.
I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I had to leave this house, obviously. I spent the rest of the day trying to figure out where to go, meanwhile avoiding looking at my own windows. My parents live in another city. I was thinking about asking my friend if I could stay in his home for a few days. But at that exact moment, he messaged me. "Please help. Since you sent me that picture, I see the same thing, but it's my reflection instead of yours. Whatever this is, you brought it to my house. Please try to find out how to stop this. I'm going crazy." I was terrified. I felt guilty. It was my fault that this thing reached him too. And then I remembered what I wanted to do not a few hours before. I went back up to the bathroom and I picked up the hammer from the ground. I looked into the eyes of the other me and then hit the mirror with the hammer. It was gone. The other me was gone. I felt happy and relieved. I managed to do it. I checked out every window in my house and my reflection was normal. I defeated it. Then as I looked out the window, I froze. The thing was standing in my courtyard, and it wasn't a reflection anymore. It was the other me standing there, constantly changing its face, resembling hundreds of humans. I didn't defeat it. I let it out.
Would you trade your life for another?
I had just swerved off the road to avoid hitting this stranger, and this was the last thing I expected him to say after I got out to check on him. "Are you damn mental? What are you doing out here?" I steamed. "You could have died." All I received back was him giving off a dry laugh.
Because I knew you'd miss.
I looked over to the side of the road where my car was resting halfway in a ditch, the front end completely totaled. I just missed him after he appeared out of nowhere, and I'd lost control. Furiously, I turned back to him. "Do you see what you've done?" I pointed to my vehicle, but all he did was wave me off.
We were meant to meet.
Marvelous. A genuine lunatic, I decided. I started heading towards the ditch, but he called out to me.
No, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Bad idea to waste this chance, you know.
Just by hearing him, I was practically snarling and whirling around. "What do you want?"
You didn't answer my question.
What question?
Would you trade your life for another?
I stared at him at a loss for words. I mean, what kind of a question is that even?
Well, would you? Because you are talking to someone who could make it happen. A once-in-this-lifetime opportunity.
It took a good minute before I had the words to muster, but I finally said, "You're crazy. I'm going back to my car. You stay away from me. Understand?"
Who said you ever left?
I immediately froze in place, and the stranger gave me a sly smile.
Go ahead. Have a look for yourself.
I moved forward slowly, inching towards the driver door. Through the window, I could see myself slumped over, blood dripping from a wound on my forehead. I just breathed. Holy shit. and I was backing into the stranger, never hearing him approach. Am I dead?
Tough break, eh? Deal's still on the table, though.
I looked into his cold eyes and asked him, "Who are you?"
Oh, just someone who can help you with that.
I looked back at my body, despair gripping me. My wife, my children, what would they do without me? I looked him in his dead eyes again. What happens if I take this deal? The stranger's dark eyes seemingly flashed as he replied.
You take my place. You'd stand here until someone else comes along, and you convince them to trade.
And what happens to you then?
I go back to my old life, like nothing ever happened. Just like the guy before me. See, it doesn't really matter who lives or dies, as long as the balance remains.
He explained while extending his palm.
So, what do you say? Do we have a deal?
And so I reached forward, hesitating just before we made contact, but another glance at my body persuaded me enough, and right then and there, I shook his hand.
Good luck, friend.
He said those words while his face splitted into a grin. And then he was gone, and I was alone. I've had a lot of time to think about what I agreed to ever since, and exactly who or what I made this deal with. Because since then, I haven't seen a single car on this dark road, or a single star in the sky.